So we've just finished learning about paraphrasing, what it is, why it's important, and talked through the steps and some tips about how to do it. So now I'm going to do two examples here for you to demonstrate the process, and then the worksheet for today will have 4 examples that you will do on your own. Okay, so here we go. So this is the original text from Puntledge, Tubing on the Puntledge, page 2. So let's just we'll just give ourselves a little bit more space between these pieces here so that we can kind of have one and then the other. Okay, so let's remember the first part of this process that we need to do is we're going to reread the original text out loud. Then we move away from it, we turn it over, stop and think about it, and then we try to rewrite it. Okay, so the river is fairly shallow up close to the hatchery, and this means that it runs fast. There is a sweeping corner as the river bends to the left, and you have to be careful not to let the fast water smash you into the steep cliff of gray shale that looms 20 meters above the river. So analytically, if I look at that, this is a compound sentence for sentence 1. And it's also a compound sentence with a that clause for sentence number 2. It's talking about the waters near the hatchery, the speed of the river. It's talking about the way the river moves, and a cliff close to the side of the river. Okay, so now we move down here, and this is where we're going to actually do our paraphrase. So this first one we'll do as an integral citation. So the first thing you need to do is to put out the parts of the citation that we need, the author's name, the date, and then our signal verb, which goes into the past tense. Now here comes the change, the translation of that text into my own words. So you'll notice that it took me a little bit of time there. I had to stop, I had to think, right? And I didn't want to write a compound sentence. So instead, I wrote a simple sentence in the first one in the form of a that clause that comes after the signal verb stated, that the boys stood by the fast moving waters of the river. That kind of captures that first idea. And then I talk a little bit about the river, about how it's turning, and then also I shifted from a compound sentence into an academic sentence. You notice I did use the word cliff. If we go back to the original here, yeah, so I changed it from tall to steep cliff to a tall cliff, right? And that's using a synonym. So I've done exactly as my tips suggested that I should. I've changed the sentence formula, the structure. I've also used synonyms. I've put it into an integral citation. I've captured the main idea. And this is a fairly strong paraphrase. Okay, let's move on to the second one. So this is another clip from another one of those short stories. This is from Stork Tree. So there will be on your worksheet. It'll be exactly the same, but obviously I'm going to pick new texts for new sections of the text for you to translate into your words, for you to paraphrase into your words. it should be interesting. Just follow the process as I'm doing it here, right? So move through those steps again, read it out loud to yourself, move away from the original, stop and think about it, and then try to state it in your words. Tip number 1, use synonyms. Tip number 2, use your new structure, some different type of sentence formula. So let's do that again. When I saw this mighty tree, comma, I stood there transfixed in that first moment as the motorbikes scoot by. They blare their horns without thinking, but as I watch, a pair of monks walk by in their orange robes, and they bow to the tree. Okay, this is interesting. This is a little bit more complex writing than from the Puntledge story, or from the tubing on the Puntledge story. So here we have, this is a complex sentence with a scoopable phrase in the middle. So that one, complex with scoopable. This is the scoopable phrase in that first moment, which is a prepositional phrase. And then the second sentence is a compound sentence with a couple of scoopable elements in it as well. So compound with scoopable elements. So I just have to be aware of that. So I'm just doing a quick sentence identification for myself. Main idea here being that the tree kind of really captured the attention of the writer. There are motorbikes in the scene that are making noise, but then there's a contrast here of a pair of monks kind of moving by peacefully and honoring the tree. Okay, so let's move down here. Okay, so this one, we'll do this one as a non-integral citation. So that means that we already know that at the end, we'll have to include all of the information of the citation. So now here I've thought about it, I've looked at the sentences, now I'm going to try to write it. Now because I know that I'm doing non-integral, all of the source information comes at the end. So I can just do my paraphrase first and then we'll put the source at the end in a non-integral citation. I'm putting my verbs into the past tense on purpose there because obviously this is the citation, so we want things to be in the past tense to honor the rules of APA. So let's say that I don't know how to restate motorbikes in my own words, and I'm like, oh, I can't think up a synonym for that. So as I mentioned, you can always go to thesaurus.com here and see what comes up. So yes, so look, this is an awesome website, right? It's actually under the original title of dictionary.com, which I really promote as a really great website to help if you need to figure out the definition of something. And then up here you can toggle over, notice these top two bars, you can toggle over to thesaurus, and then you just put in the word that you're trying to find an alternative for, and it's going to give you a couple of different options. So I'm going to say motorcycle here because that's the one that I think is the best synonym. So I've again, as motorcycles roared past him. Good. And now if you wanted to, we could do the paraphrase, the synonym thing again for the word bow. So again, we try to find, so let's see here. And you can see what I'm doing there is that there are some possible different definitions here. So you have to kind of make sure you're finding the right one. So I actually think that bend over the verb, because I'm using it as a verb, would be more correct, right? Okay, good. And so this is something that you'll also notice about paraphrases, is that because sometimes you are forced to, your paraphrase might actually be longer than the original text that you're working with. Um, because sometimes the writing has been, authors will often aim for brevity, right? And so then if you don't copy the exact wording of what they're doing, it might take a little bit longer phrasing to explain that same idea. So let's take a look at this paraphrase here. So the author was stopped by the size and power of the huge tree. He stared up at the many branches as motorcycles roared past him. So I've changed the structure there. I've changed it into a complex B sentence. Remember, in the original, it was a compound sentence, so I've changed my structure. I've incorporated some synonyms. Um, Finally, he noticed walking monks who honor the tree by bobbing their heads respectfully. So that's what I'm talking about here. This by bobbing their heads respectfully is a paraphrase for bowed. They bowed to the tree. So saying they bowed to the tree is obviously simpler. And this is one of the tricks of paraphrasing, is that if we feel a little bit too lazy about doing this, then we're going to just say, it's easy for me to just throw the original word in there. And the hard part about that is every professor, every teacher, every instructor is a little bit different. So some teachers will be a little bit more relaxed and they'll say, oh, you just put two words from the original sentence together because it was easy and because it's a clear explanation. Well, that might be okay in Professor A's class, but in Professor B's class, they might be stricter, and they might just say, boom, you're going to lose 5% of your mark because you're plagiarizing right there. That's not paraphrased enough. So that's why I kind of go over to the extreme, to really try to get my own phrasing but capture the same core idea. And that is the heart of what paraphrasing is. So for your practice assignment today, again, it's not for marks, but this exact process will be on the learning check next week. Next Thursday, we're having our second learning check. So you really should do your best at this. You should try to master this practice that I'm about to give you. I'll include the originals um, in the worksheet, and then there'll be four more chunks of writing that you will need to translate, to paraphrase correctly. And I always say, we hear that classic phrase, practice makes perfect. Well, I don't like that phrase. It's not completed, because what if you're practicing something incorrectly? Then you're fossilizing or locking down the knowledge in the wrong way. You're learning the incorrect process. So what I like to say is, proper practice equals perfect production. So you need the practice to be correct before you know that you're actually locking down the knowledge in the right way. So proper practice equals perfect production. So hopefully today we'll get some proper practice with this new writing tool.